starting 14th on the dirty side of the track. And the unfortunate Pedro de la Rosa is suffering most of all, because he's not only moved down from 9th, the clean side of the track, to 22nd, the dirty side of the track. Incidentally, he was 6th fastest this morning in the warm-up, and that is a very considerable achievement. Michael Schumacher was quickest again this morning in the half-hour warm-up. There's David Coulthard, who was 4th fastest. As a matter of fact, in the warm-up this morning, the positions, Schumacher, Häkkinen, Barrichello, Coulthard, were exactly the same as they were in qualifying, but Jenson Button, who, as I said earlier on, qualified 11th, was 5th fastest this morning. The Williams BMW is going extremely well, because his teammate Ralf Schumacher qualified 5th on the grid. So the question now is what is going to happen at the start, because as you've heard, passing on this circuit, this 2.9-mile circuit, is a 65-lap race, is very difficult indeed. It is on most tracks. It's particularly difficult here because the performance of the cars is so close, irrespective of which constructor has made them, and they're all top men, of course. But Michael Schumacher is starting in pole position for the first time this year, for the first time since the Japanese Grand Prix last year, which followed his magnificent pole position in Malaysia when he returned last year after breaking his leg in the British Grand Prix. So he's on a real high here. He's matched Mika Häkkinen's 24 pole positions now. Mika Häkkinen is starting behind him. He was 0.3 of a second slower this morning. So Ferrari are certainly looking good, because Rubens Barrichello has beaten his man, if you regard his man as David Coulthard. So it's Ferrari, McLaren on the grid, followed by Ralf Schumacher's Williams and Jacques Villeneuve, 6th. Now watch Jacques Villeneuve. He's starting from the right-hand side of the track, the left-hand side as you will be looking at it. He's a super fast starter. He's got an improved Honda engine in the BAR, and he's going to be going for it.
Yes, Jacques is pretty handy off the line, and maybe that is something to do with the fact that he's sitting in the car and totally, utterly focused. But he's got a lot of work to do today. I think everybody's got a lot of work to do, Murray. I believe Michael Schumacher has got about 0.2 of a second per lap in hand over everybody else. If you look at the general trend through testing last week, free practice, qualifying, the warm-up this morning, Michael has got the edge around here. First time for a long time. And but having said that, the last time a Formula One car driver won from the pole was at the Hungarian Grand Prix last year. So the facts are certainly against Michael in that respect, but everything else is very much for him. This is a very physical track. He's super fit, as we know. And Michael really, I think, has got a great chance of winning this race this afternoon.
There we are, we're with David Coulthard now, Mika Häkkinen in front of him, Rubens Barrichello to the left. That's Spaniard Marc Gené in the Minardi.
Yes, it was quite and Michael Schumacher was slow away, but I think he has, yes he has, he's now rejoined. So I thought Schumacher was temporarily stuck on the grid there, Murray, but he did get away eventually.
Yeah, and you are now, of course, for those of you who are remembering the British Grand Prix some years ago, when he passed several people after the start of the parade lap and was penalised, you are now allowed to regain your position on the formation lap, which is what they're on now, exiting turn 2. Now then there's this long, you remember you've been round with Martin, a tremendously stirring exposition that was too. Around the long turn 3, this is turn 4, which leads down to the slowest part of the course, turn 5, it's about a 55-mile-an-hour corner on the apex. And now they start to climb. There's not a lot of gradient here at Barcelona, but I can tell you that when you try to walk round it, you notice that it's a lot steeper than you would have thought.
Yes, there are very few overtaking places because one fast corner tends to lead to another. I have seen a car overtaken into turn 5, for example. Unfortunately, it was me, I think, at the time, on a wet day in a race many years ago. But really, it's virtually impossible anywhere else, except if you get a good tow down the pit straight. you can have a stab. There's very good braking on either side of the track going into the first corner. The problem is staying close to the car in front through those last two very high-speed corners, where you see Michael weaving around now, generating some heat in the tyres. I've said before, I think it generates very, very little heat, but there you go. Now, one thing I did learn this morning is that after the drivers' parade, a lot of the drivers noticed that it's very, very windy up on the top of the circuit. You don't notice it so much in the paddock or down here in the pit straight, but the wind crossing the circuit has a big effect here at Barcelona, and it really upsets the aerodynamics just when the drivers need it most in these high-speed corners, and that will play a factor through the race as their cars are moving around.
We're with Rubens Barrichello now, and he watches Häkkinen peel off to the right, and he closes up on his position on the grid behind Michael Schumacher. So when you come to look at the grid head on, as you're almost doing now, pole position, Michael Schumacher will be on your right. I remind you to watch Jacques Villeneuve. He will be on the left-hand side, 3 rows back. The 2 Spaniards, sadly, are at the back, because that's Marc Genet, who's starting 20th in the Minardi, and Pedro de la Rosa, very discouraged, obviously, closes up at the back.
Yes, the front men have been sitting now over 30 seconds, Murray. 32, 33 seconds before the lights.
It's ready, and it is action! Nice one, Michael Schumacher, who cuts across the track and tries to head off, and does so. Mika Häkkinen, who continues to attack as they go up into turn 1. David Coulthard, then look at Ralf Schumacher. Ralf Schumacher is up into 2nd position. Amazing. Or has he got past Häkkinen? No, he's not, but he's got past David Coulthard. So David Coulthard, who started 4th, has been passed by Ralf Schumacher in the Williams BMW. A magnificent start.
And they both passed Barrichello, Murray. So the main man off the start was very clearly Ralf Schumacher. Hooked it up well, found a nice clear route through, and slotted into 3rd, and so nearly 2nd, as you saw, going into that first corner. But a dream start for Michael.
Yep, 7 years between the Schumacher brothers. Just imagine what Ralph's going to be like when he's got yet more experience under his belt, and already Pedro Diniz in the Sauber is out of the race into the gravel track. Hopefully there's not going to be a problem over keeping the race going, because Michael Schumacher is exactly where he wants to be. Started in pole position, got a magnificent start. He's ahead of his main rival, Mika Häkkinen, and Ralf Schumacher is in 3rd position, ahead of David Coulthard, who is 4th. Rubens Barrichello, who started in 3rd position, is down to 5th place in the 2nd Ferrari, and that's a very unhappy situation for the Brazilian. Coming up to complete lap 1.
And Jenson Button moving up into 9th place too. So big cheer from the crowd outside the commentary box here as Michael Schumacher goes over the start-finish line with a 1.1 second lead, as you can see, over Mika Häkkinen. And then the rest following closely. So Schumacher then up into turn 3, just what he needed with his strategy and the tyres he's running on that car, with some clear air in front of him.
And Jenson Button in the top 10 with a vengeance, because he's in 9th position, having started 10th on the grid, qualified 11th. And bringing up the back of the field, Mazzacani in the Minardi, because Pedro Diniz has already retired. 22 started, 21 running, lap 2. Michael Schumacher leading at the end of the first lap by 1.1 seconds. And now, as far as Mika Häkkinen is concerned, he is at a major disadvantage. His car was slower than Schumacher's Ferrari all the way through practicing and qualifying. Schumacher is ahead of him. That will help Ross Brawn in the Ferrari pit lane, the man who defines the strategy. There's another one out. It is the Prost of Jean Alesi, the great French driver. Oh, and out goes another one. That is the Arrows of De La Rosa. Well, what a dreadful Spanish Grand Prix it has been for him, because he also went off this morning in the warm-up, and this will be a meeting he will want to forget. So 3 retirements: Diniz out, Alesi out, De La Rosa out. Michael Schumacher, fastest of all, of course, and he's increased his lead over Mika Häkkinen to 1.6 seconds as he goes into turn. Here, replay.
Yes, here's the start. they're all quite clean away. Jenson Button I see moving well through the middle of the pack there. That's how he jumped up to 9th place. Here's another view from the back of the field. And look, the ones spinning their wheels just don't get away quite as well. If you can hook up and get rid of all the wheel spin, these things take off in the most amazing way. But Michael away. Mick are doing quite well too, I can see right at the front end. Ralph getting squeezed out at the last moment. Coulthard, a net loser, but maintains his 4th place because of Barrichello's very poor start. There it is. That's how, look, that's how Hakkinen stayed in front of Ralf Schumacher to maintain that 2nd position. 2 Jordans then. Which one of those is ahead? Frentzen has passed Trulli. Frentzen ahead and leading the 2 Jordans. They're currently 7th and 8th. Johnny Herbert is back in 15th. Eddie Irvine in the sister Jaguar, a couple of places ahead of him in 13th.
Brilliant bit of track exploitation by Ralf Schumacher at the start there, and he continues to hold his 3rd position ahead of David Coulthard, and Michael Schumacher is stretching his lead, coming through to complete the 3rd lap. Now let's see what the gap was. 1.6 seconds at the end of lap 2, over the line into lap 4 he goes, 2.4 seconds. Now this could be an indication of fuel strategy. I've even had it suggested to me that some people might be stopping 3 times, which I find very hard to believe. That's Pedro de la Rosa, a replay.
Yes, he's lost his front wing, so he's obviously tripped over somebody and he's gone off. I mean, you're losing several hundred kilos of downforce when your front wing disappears. That's why his car literally understeered off the racetrack. Michael Schumacher scampering away. The man being dropped off the back of the leading pack very much is Rubens Barrichello. After him, Villeneuve, Frentzen and co down the field are a country mile off the pace, some 2.7 seconds slower than Michael Schumacher on that lap. Now, from my understanding, an ideal strategy here is stopping 3 times, but I think that would be quite a brave move. I'm expecting them to stop twice with a longish first stint and a good sprint in the middle, but we'll see how it shapes up as the race unfolds.
Well, I've seriously had it suggested that somebody might, or some people might be stopping 3 times. You saw the gallant Louise Goodman ferreting about in the Arrows garage there, probably waiting for De La Rosa to come in and tell us what happened to him. He's not going to be a very happy chap. So I repeat that Alesi, De La Rosa and Diniz are out of the Spanish Grand Prix. We're on lap 4 out of 64 into lap 5 now. Michael Schumacher leads. 2.4 seconds was the gap. 2.7 seconds is the gap. David Coulthard there is edging up on Ralf Schumacher. There's only 0.8 of a second between them. Williams BMW 3rd, McLaren Mercedes in 4th position. Here is a replay, and that's what happened. That's Pedro de la Rosa coming together with Jean Alesi.
Yes, so Alesi just simply tipped off into the gravel. That's how De La Rosa lost his front wing, and the very next corner he understeers, drives straight off the road.
Well, I never cease to marvel at how well Ralf Schumacher is going. Not just because he's a brilliant driver a brilliant brother of a brilliant double world champion twice over, Michael Schumacher, but the way he's staying ahead of David Coulthard. Now, you're getting an indication here of how difficult it is, A, to close up, and B, to do anything about the man in front of you. I'm quite sure that David Coulthard is actually in a faster car, but he gets into the disturbed air behind Ralf Schumacher's Williams, and there's very little he can do about getting past. Ralf Schumacher is on the racing line, and David Coulthard has just got to sit patiently there and wait for him to make a mistake, which he may well not do. And in the Formula 3000 race yesterday, the battle for the lead was finally resolved when about 30 laps in, the leader did make a mistake, and Junqueira, who won the race, was able to go through.
I would imagine Coulthard will be groaning for 2 reasons. Firstly, he really doesn't need Ralf in front of him because the McLaren is a faster car. And secondly, I know he's carrying a bag of ribs that are not really absolutely ready to do one of the toughest physical Grand Prix of the year. So Coulthard, I think, carrying a few problems inside that car and could do with some clear air, but he hasn't got it, so he'll have to make the best of it.
We're about 1/11 of the way through the race. Lap 6 out of 65. Michael Schumacher leads Mika Häkkinen by an ever-increasing margin. It's now 3 seconds. Ralf Schumacher is 6 seconds behind his brother in 3rd place. David Coulthard is, there you can see the gap, 4th position. Rubens Barrichello in the 2nd Ferrari is 5th, and in 6th position, Jacques Villeneuve, but that's where he started.
That's 5 times in the last lap and a half. Ralf Schumacher's locked up his inside left front, so he'll be paying the price for that later on, especially as almost all of the fast corners are and the big turn 13 ahead of him. Rubens has got a curious pace in the Grand Prix, I think, so far this year. It just seems entirely comfortable to go along at the speed he wants to do. He does not seem to want to take part in the Grand Prix in many ways. And when he was leading the British Grand Prix, you still sense he was very much pacing himself. But nonetheless, it's keeping him relatively up the sharp end. But he's now 10.4 seconds behind his teammate Michael Schumacher up there in the lead.
Well, frankly, I am amazed that the race has spread out as much as it has at the moment, because we're on lap 7 now out of 65. And Mika Häkkinen is dropping back all the time. I don't know if this is indicative of the fact that Michael Schumacher is going to be stopping more times than Mika Häkkinen is. You never know where you are with Ferrari and Ross Brawn, who is their master tactician, because he keeps on producing different strategies to throw people. Maybe he's trying to do that today. You saw Ralf Schumacher again lock up a tyre there, and David Coulthard momentarily closed up on him. But Ralf Schumacher's ahead, he's got the line, he's going to stay there. Now, behind Villeneuve, who I established was in 6th position, are the two Jordans, and Frentzen, who started behind Jarno Trulli, 1 place on the grid, has got ahead of him. He's in 7th place, Jarno Trulli is 8th. Jenson Button is running 9th, but he's right behind Jarno Trulli. It would be nice to have a look at them. Mika Salo is 10th in the Sauber, ahead of Ricardo Zonta and Jos Verstappen. The two Jaguars, Johnny Herbert is in 15th position, his teammate Eddie Irvine is in 13th place. And you're looking now at the Ferrari, and there is Mika Häkkinen in 2nd position. Here comes Ralf Schumacher and David Coulthard, 4th place.
Yes, interestingly, Murray, that's the first lap, the previous lap, that Häkkinen has actually pulled a little bit back on Michael Schumacher. I think this comes back to what James was saying, that the harder or the medium tyre would be better earlier on and then start fading away just as the softer tyre starts coming back into play again. So that's the first time in the race that Häkkinen has pegged Schumacher.
And here is the closest race in the top 6. It's between Ralf Schumacher, who's already had 1 3rd place this year, the Williams team taking it fairly easy in the garage. Lap 9 out of 65 in Spain, no change at the front. Michael Schumacher is 3 seconds ahead of Mika Häkkinen, then 8.7 seconds behind is this battle. Ralf Schumacher in the Williams BMW, David Coulthard in the McLaren Mercedes, fighting for 4th place, ahead of Rubens Barrichello, who is 5th. Jacques Villeneuve is 6th. 7th and 8th for the two Jordans, Frentzen and Trulli. Jenson Button is still in 9th position, right behind Jarno Trulli. Very close battle between Trulli and Button, and Frentzen with them. And in 10th position, Mika Salo. Eddie Irvine in the Jaguar is in 13th place. Johnny Herbert in the 2nd Jaguar is 15th. 19 out of the 22 who started are still running. The retirement, Jean Alesi, Pedro de la Rosa, who had a coming together, and Pedro Diniz, who went off right at the beginning of the race. And Ralf Schumacher and his brother are both in the top 3. Michael leading the race for Ferrari, Ralf 3rd for Williams BMW, sandwiching Mika Häkkinen, the world champion.
Yes, but the last 2 laps now, Mika Häkkinen has started edging back towards Michael Schumacher. He pegged the gap, now he's just creeping back at him. So let's be interesting. There's a 10th now. Michael's pulled a 10th back out on that lap. So it's pretty much even Stevens between the top 2. And then really 3/4 of a second per lap behind are Ralf Schumacher, Coulthard and Barrichello.
And let's just remember the World Championship situation as we watch Rubens Barrichello in that 5th position chasing David Coulthard. Michael Schumacher is 20 points ahead of David Coulthard, the British Grand Prix winner. He's 22 points ahead of Mika Häkkinen, who's won the championship for the last 2 years. And in the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari have got a massive 17-point lead over McLaren, with the Williams team in an excellent third position, which they certainly couldn't have expected with their new BMW engine when this season began. They're ahead of Jordan, who took third place in the Constructors' Championship last year, and are sharing fourth with Benetton at the moment. So, lap 10 out of 65. Weather conditions continue to be excellent. The track temperature is creeping up. It started the race round about 23 degrees. It's gone up about 4 or 5 degrees since then. But I don't think that's going to be a great problem, although this Barcelona circuit is extremely tough on tyres. Bridgestone, who are supplying all the tyres here, brought 2 compounds here, a medium one and a soft one. Michael Schumacher is the odd man out at the present moment. He's on the harder compound. Everybody else in the race, except Jos Verstappen, because Pedro de la Rosa is out of it. The 2 arrows started on the harder compound, so there's just 2 on it at the moment. Michael Schumacher, who is leading the race, and Jos Verstappen, who is in 12th place. There's the battle for third. It continues, and David Coulthard, try as he may, and he will be trying, cannot do anything about Ralf Schumacher in front of him. Ralf, his gap between him and his brother is now 10.3 seconds. It's a 2-car race for the lead. The 2 rivals, Michael Schumacher, twice a world champion, and Mika Häkkinen the same. 3.4 seconds between them, so the gap has extended a bit.
Yes, Ralf locking his wheels really into almost every slow corner now, and that'll feed David Coulthard's sort of energy level, because there we're going, we're flicking back on. Look at the speed that Ralf Schumacher came. He started on the grid just behind Barrichello, who you're on board with. So you're currently running 5th in this Grand Prix, and the speed with which Ralf Schumacher hooked up that Williams was quite incredible off the line. Barrichello thinking better than going round the outside of Coulthard there. And the Ferrari mechanics, they know they've not got much to do till at least lap 20, I would imagine.
Well, it depends on what the strategies are. I can't see anybody doing a one-stop strategy, it's conceivable. But if they're 2 stoppers, and last year is anything to go by, we can expect the first stop round about lap 23, and then the second one round about lap 43. On the other hand, if anybody is trying a 3-stop strategy, it's going to be in about 5 laps' time that the first stop happens. That's lap 16. And as you heard Martin say earlier on, and you've heard from James Allen, all these things are worked out on computer beforehand. All sorts of variables are fed into it, and they get answers about when they should come in for the fastest possible race time. 3-stop strategy seems to be... Maybe James has got news on that.
Well, I'm down in the McLaren garage, everything nice and easy, very relaxed, but I'm fascinated by this. Schumacher seemed to capitalise on that little lull that I talked about at the top of the show in the softer tyres of Häkkinen. But Häkkinen's managed his very, very well indeed. Going to see a quite long first stint. It may even be as far as lap 24, possibly 25, before we see the first of these front runners making a stop. What was very interesting to me, guys, is about lap 4 or 5, they were doing laps in the 1:20, mid 1:24 bracket. Now they've dropped off about half a second. They seem to be just pacing each other, I think. What do you think?
Well, I know that the fastest lap last year was about 1:25 to the nearest 10th. And the race times last year were a couple of seconds slower, 2 or 3 seconds slower than the qualifying times, which you'd expect, of course, because they got a lot less fuel in qualifying. The same sort of situation here. I mean, the leaders are lapping in about 1:25, but Mika Häkkinen has just closed the gap to under 3 seconds, to 2.7 seconds to be exact. And in the same way, as you can see for yourself, David Coulthard is really piling on the pressure on Ralf Schumacher in the Williams. He's closed right up with him. Do you think Ralf Schumacher's hurting his tyres, Martin?
I think without any doubt, because he's really fighting the car hard. He's had so many acrobatic moments. But also Barrichello is catching the pair of them. Louise, what can you tell us?
It's just a theory on Ralf Schumacher, as you say, you keep seeing him locking up that car. I don't think he's really got it hooked up quite how he'd like it. Now, he is in the race car, but he had a problem with that car in the warm-up this morning, so he didn't get a chance to run on full tanks. He was actually going to use the T car for the race, but there was a worry over the engine when he went out on the formation lap, so he switched back to the race car. They were actually still adjusting the settings on the grid, so it's obviously not perfect yet. It doesn't seem to be slowing down, but I think it's making this job a lot harder.
Well, I'll tell you this, Ralf Schumacher is slowing, as a result of which David is catching him, and as a result of that, Rubens Barrichello, who is fifth, is closing up on David Coulthard. Not very quickly, but it is happening. There's 15 seconds covering the first 5 at the present moment. We're on lap 14. Hello, here's a replay. Let's see what's happening. It is Ricardo Zonta there, and there is Jos Verstappen. Well, nothing's happening apparently. On they go then, Ralf Schumacher and David Coulthard. Now, track temperature is 30 degrees. It's going up all the time. It's gone up 6 degrees since just before the beginning of the Spanish Grand Prix. We're on lap 14, and the 2 McLarens are in first and fourth places. Sorry, second and fourth places. The 2 Ferraris are first and fifth. Rubens Barrichello will be a very disappointed man, because he had Ralf Schumacher absolutely catapult past him to gain a place, and gain 2 places as a result of getting past David Coulthard. And as Martin has pointed out, Rubens either can't or won't do anything about where he is now. He's over 2 seconds behind the battle between Schumacher and Coulthard. Was closing up a bit, it doesn't seem to be happening anymore. Jacques Villeneuve in the BAR Honda is 17 seconds behind Rubens Barrichello, who is in 5th place as the battle for 3rd comes towards us. There you are, you see in the background the Scarlet Ferrari. Well, you remember, Martin, last year it was a very static Spanish Grand Prix, and there was a bit of an uproar amongst the cognoscenti afterwards about it being a dull race, and then the season absolutely caught alight thereafter. I was expecting this one to be a bit more closely fought than it is at the moment, but we are, after all, only on lap 15 with another 50 to go.
Yeah, static is a very kind word, I think, Murray. It's strange. This is one of the best tracks in the world, really. Not the best, but one of. You're going to see another replay here of Ralf locking a wheel, and then I think Coulthard will come across the grass behind him and get well out of shape too. So the pair of them trying hard enough, but often the most boring and small circuits seem to keep the cars more together, and there's less driver element in it. And I think we do tend to get better races then. But I had an interesting experience in the week driving an older Formula 1 car with wide track and slicks, and I have to say, for sure, they've gone the wrong way with this narrow track and groove tyres.
Of which I hope we'll hear more later. Lap 16 now. So 49 to go, and 3rd and 4th are still virtually locked together. David Coulthard straining every muscle round that long double 90, turn 3, down to turn 4, which is another double 90 that they're at now. Then they drop down to the 2nd gear, 55 mile an hour, turn 5, continue to drop downhill to turn 7, which is where the track starts to climb again. Now, Michael Schumacher, there's a bit of toing and froing between Schumacher and Häkkinen for the lead. It's 2.4 seconds at the moment. .49 laps to go at Barcelona. Weather conditions continue to be fine. It actually started to spit with rain at one point this morning, and we looked up into the sky and it was very overcast, and people were saying, oh, we're going to have a wet one. But the clouds are swept away. It's blue overhead. You're looking now at Jenson Button and he's right up with Jarno Trulli in 8th position, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who is in 7th place. So Jensen, who qualified 11th, started 10th after De La Rosa was pushed to the back because of that fuel infringement, is right up with the 2 Jordans and getting a lot of experience at this circuit. Now you're getting another indication of how difficult it is to pass, because Jensen has actually made up quite a lot of time on the track. He can't do anything about track position at the present moment. Meantime, Michael Schumacher is still over 2 seconds ahead of Häkkinen, who's continuing to inch up on the Ferrari.
Yes, Jensen Button is easily matching the pace of those 2 Jordans. He held back a little bit the lap before and closed in over a quarter of a second. And it's absolutely clear to see if he could pass them, I think he'd be scampering away, because his teammate running up there in 3rd place is lapping 1.2 seconds per lap faster as the Benetton boys get ready for what will be a very, very early stop. And Fisichella down in 16th place, Wirtz in 14th, and they're on a 3-stopper. They're having an appalling weekend at Benetton.
Yeah, you remember we said that a 3-stopper would be the fastest way to complete this race, and look at the way Jensen Button is pushing Jarno Trulli, who has lost a place in this race already because Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who started behind him, has got ahead of him. You can see the 2 yellow Jordans together. Now, in Formula One this year, the top teams, of course, are Ferrari and McLaren and Jordan. That's the way they finished at the end of 1999. But this year, to everybody's great surprise, Williams are now the 3rd team. They're ahead of Jordan in the Constructors' Championship. And Jordan have had all sorts of problems with primarily the gearbox, which Mike Gascoigne, their technical director, reckons they have solved. Alex Wirtz comes in from 16th position. Now, Marc Genet has already stopped, unseen by us. Heidfeld has already stopped. Let's see how long it takes. Wheels off, wheels on, fuel in. And the Lollipop Man, and behind him is the sole remaining Prost of Nick Heidfeld, the German driver who's come in from 18th position.
You can see out of the window, and now you can see them on screen, the Williams mechanics are ready too, so I suspect that could be good news for Coulthard in 4th if Ralph's got to come in. Bad news for Ralph. We'll see which one of them it is coming in. That's a shot of a Spanish-sponsored car going a bit sideways, so not too dramatic. The Williams is ahead of that Jordan now. So,
yeah, I think you're right, actually, but we'll soon see. Meantime, Michael Schumacher is carving his way round through the field. There he is, and Mika Häkkinen is now under 2 seconds behind the Ferrari as a result of a series of laps marginally quicker than the race leader.
Button in the pits, it was Villeneuve I saw ahead of the Jordan, so Button in for a pit stop at the end of lap 18.
Jensen Button in, you see the Williams mechanics swarming in the centre of your picture there, swarming around the Williams, and the time, 7.7 seconds. So he's come in on lap 18. Well, it's either an early 2-stopper or a slightly later 3-stopper. We'll have to work that one out, but meantime, Mika Häkkinen now has got past the Prost, which of course Michael Schumacher had already passed, and that would have eased out the gap. Now we'll see, it was 1.9 seconds, it's now 1.7 seconds. There is Schumacher, here is Häkkinen. Now we wait for Ralf Schumacher and David Coulthard with only 0.7 of a second between them, ahead of Rubens Barrichello 5th, and he's closing up on the Williams BMW and on the McLaren Mercedes. Jacques Villeneuve is still 6th.
Yes, I saw the Williams mechanics stay out in the pit lane. I half expected Ralph to come in, but the chief mechanic just waved them back in, so they've all gone back into the garage again. So Williams obviously changing their tactics at the last moment and letting Ralph run a little bit further.
Now, of course, Michael Schumacher in the lead, even if Mika Häkkinen closes up on him. He's going to be a mighty, mighty difficult man to pass. This is Michael Schumacher's 131st Grand Prix. It's Mika Häkkinen's 133rd. Into the pits comes Johnny Herbert from 14th position in the Jaguar, 2 places behind his teammate Eddie Irvine.
Little sip of milk for the Pussycat, a new set of tyres. Johnny Herbert really, again, not having a sparkling weekend. They had a job getting the fuel filler out, you saw there. Johnny away in a cloud of smoke. You know now that his pit limiter is on. His red rain light is flashing away at the rear so that everybody knows when the drivers are using their pit speed limiter, so they don't use them on the track as traction control. And Johnny feeds back in and is about to be lapped.
And is lapped, but gets out to the track ahead of the McLaren of Mika Häkkinen. So is Johnny Herbert going to be passed by Mika Häkkinen cleanly and quickly? Will he move over and let Häkkinen through? In which case it won't delay the Finn. If he does, Mika Häkkinen is going to have a greater gap between him and Michael Schumacher. They're on lap 21, so we're just about at 1/3 distance at the present moment. Nobody in the top 10 has yet stopped for fuel and tyres. The highest man to have stopped is Johnny Herbert, who we've just seen in 13th position come in. He's lost that place, of course. Jenson Button has been in and is now in 14th place. And Michael Schumacher has increased the gap between himself and Mika Häkkinen, and it will be increasing yet further because he's ahead of Herbert. Dives into the dust cloud. Somebody's gone off. I think somebody's just put a wheel off the circuit into the dusty bit between the track and the grass. It's very hot and dry here.
Well, Mika Häkkinen, although he's got to clear Johnny Herbert yet, who's now on fresh tyres, of course, and Mika Häkkinen has made a better job of getting through that traffic. The gap now down to just 2.1 seconds between first and second place. Johnny looking in his mirrors. He knows Mika's there because, yes, Johnny gently lifting the throttle. That's the best way to let somebody through without losing too much time yourself. So very correct there from Johnny Herbert. The waved blue flags were there for him anyway. You're allowed to pass 5 of those. If you don't yield in that time, you're given a stop and go penalty. Johnny all too aware of that, but Mika now leapfrogs him and the gap remains at 2.1 seconds. 2.0 seconds now, look, sorry, at the first sector time in the lap.
There are very few more experienced people. A bit of puff of smoke from the back of Schumacher's Ferrari there. Very few more experienced drivers than Johnny Herbert. He's driven for Tyrrell and Benetton and Lotus and Ligier and Stewart, of course, last year, and now Jaguar.
That's Villeneuve pitting. Villeneuve down the pit lane. I'm expecting also Eddie Irvine in on this lap to see the Jaguar mechanics in the pit lane. No Ferrari or McLaren boys available or in the pit lane or even looking like they're about to walk out. So it seems like both the Ferrari and the McLarens have got enough fuel on board to go deep into the 20-odd laps. 43 laps to go. We're about 1/3 distance. Of course, the last thing that Mika Häkkinen needs is for Michael Schumacher yet again to finish in front of him. Mika Häkkinen has yet to beat Michael Schumacher this year because Schumacher won the first 3 races. I'm sorry, I tell a lie, because he finished ahead of him at Silverstone, of course. Just before we go to James Allen down in the pits, then Michael Schumacher got badly held up there behind there it is, the Jaguar of Eddie Irvine, and the gap now you can see for yourself. Just look how close Mika Häkkinen is to the back of that Ferrari.
Well, now, is Eddie Irvine, ex-Ferrari, going to move over and let his previous team leader through? James Allen, have you got news?
Well, there's unhappiness on the Ferrari pit wall. They were ready for a Michael Schumacher stop. They disconnected his tyres. In fact, he is going to come in. They're running out onto the pit apron now. Schumacher, obviously, he's lost a tremendous amount of time. And Ross Brawn, obviously agitated about how much he's lost because he could well lose the lead of this race to Mika Häkkinen when he makes this stop on the next lap. I'm amazed by the people at 3 stops, by the way. You were saying before, guys, that it's the fastest way, but it's only the fastest way if you're at the front of the race. It's not if you're in the midfield like the guys who made the stops, the Prosts and the Benettons of this world. I can't understand why they did that today. Incidentally, I'm down in the Ferrari garage, as I say, and I'm standing next to Schumacher's race car. He's out there in the T-car today because...
James, I must interrupt you because Jarno Trulli is sitting in a stationary Jordan. There's obviously a problem. He's not getting away. Meantime, Schumacher and Häkkinen go through again.
Yeah, Schumacher did not pit at all, so the Ferrari mechanic's still out in the lane. It must be for Barrichello. Maybe they're playing psychology games with McLaren here, but that traffic has cost that has cost Michael Schumacher badly. Eddie Irvine's cost him a lot of time in that respect. And now, curiously, Michael can't stay with Irvine. And Irvine's pulled over to the right-hand side. He's clearly received all the blue flags. So Irvine now out of the picture. And that's Ralf Schumacher in from third place before he made that pit stop, and a good stop for him.
And David Coulthard goes up into third position. Barrichello goes to fourth place, and Ralf Schumacher loses track position as he accelerates out of the pit lane. Michael Schumacher has now got Mika Häkkinen on lap 24 right behind him. You can see the gap for yourself. They've both lapped Eddie Irvine, who is down in 15th place, 1 place ahead of his teammate Johnny Herbert. They've both stopped for fuel and tyres. But Schumacher is now only 0.4 of a second. Visually, you can see the gap between himself and Mika Häkkinen. And as Martin has said, and James has said, he could very easily lose track position if the Ferrari mechanics fumble his stop in comparison with McLaren. And in comes Michael Schumacher. James.
This is not at all what Ferrari had in mind. They've been very unhappy on the pit wall. I think they were ready for him last time by. In fact, they were. The tyres were out of their blankets. And I think either he went on his own and did another lap, or they didn't get the message through to him, because this isn't what was supposed to happen. Oh dear, oh dear.
Did he hit the marshal? We saw him pull away. The fuel wasn't absolutely out, James. It seemed like the fuel hose wasn't out. Did he run over the marshal?
I don't know about Marshall, but he certainly he's hit something. It's a mechanic. He's hit one of the mechanics. The fuel hose wasn't disconnected. I think it's Nigel Stepney. It is Nigel Stepney, the refueler. He pulled him off his feet as he drove out. Meanwhile, the McLaren boys are ready, and they've just put a stop as well.
Well, that just shows the pressure that's on Michael Schumacher as Nigel Stepney, the English chief mechanic at Ferrari, is helped away. I hope he's not badly hurt. Perhaps it's just a twisted ankle or something like that. But anyway, this will cause confusion and dismay in the Ferrari pit lane. And you can see they're bringing out tyres.
Watch now. Look, they lifted the lollipop. They smashed the lollipop down back on Schumacher, but he was too busy getting underway. I think Coulthard had a very poor stop, seemed to get away slowly too. So he won't be able to maximise on having a bit of clear air in front of him and get past Ralf Schumacher. Barrichello could be looking quite strong in all of this.
Lap 26 then. Mika Häkkinen now leads the Spanish Grand Prix, and Michael Schumacher has just done the fastest first sector of this 3-sector lap. And oh dear, that is, if James was right, that's Nigel Stepney having his helmet removed. Obviously, he's getting medical attention.
And here we go again. Now watch the refueling man. Look, he does the action. The lollipop went up. Michael understandably went. You can't see anything in your mirrors. And look at the lollipop coming back down right in front of Michael Schumacher's visor there. But he just carries on.
Well, it's we mustn't. James, news?
Yeah, it's sad, I'm afraid. Nigel Stepney, it is, in fact, who's the chief mechanic and the refueler. I think he's may well have broken his leg. They're just checking it at the moment. An amazing effort by the, obviously, substitute refueler. They only had a lap and a half for him to change the helmet, and basically, obviously, he will practice in case this would happen. But he did a great job for Rubens Barrichello. A slight hesitation getting the thing off, but a fantastic piece of teamwork there by Ferrari. But they're really on the rack here, boys.
No criticism is due to anybody. Everybody is under the most intense pressure at a pit stop. The driver, of course, the lollipop man, whose responsibility it is to tell the driver by lifting the lollipop, the board on the pole, that everybody is clear of the car. When he lifted it, they weren't clear of the car, and in comes Mika Häkkinen. Now, this could decide the race. Michael Schumacher took 1.3 seconds. Are you there, James?
Yes, I am, Murray, and of course they've got a little bit to play with now. There's a lot of uncertainty and edginess. Very neat and tidy stop so far by McLaren. Quite a bit of fuel went in there. 7.8. No, it's a two-stopper. He'll come in again mid-40s.
Well, now, where is Michael Schumacher as Mika Häkkinen trundles down the pit lane at a mandatory 80 kilometres an hour, fires the gun, and away he goes, and there goes the Ferrari. Now,
yes, you see, ironically, Murray, I don't think it cost Michael any time. It obviously caused some damage to the mechanic, but Michael was away. And I have to say, from what I've seen so far, it was the lollipop man's fault. Absolutely no question about it, because he did not see that the nozzle was clear of Schumacher's car. Schumacher, in a trigger reaction to that lollipop going up, has gone. He'll wonder what on earth it was doing, flapping around in front of him as he pulled away. I can't really say that I blame Michael for getting away, but then he didn't hesitate, he just went. And I have to say the Lollipop Man has been a bit overkeen. Of course, we know how intense these pit stops are, Murray. We know races have been won and lost now for some time, and it's all getting a little over-anxious.
Well, you can see how close it is now, because Schumacher and champion fighting for the lead in Spain with half the race still to go. In third position, Ralf Schumacher ahead of Rubens Barrichello, who seemingly can do nothing about the Williams BMW ahead of him, notwithstanding the fact that he's in a works Ferrari. Fifth position is David Coulthard, who's tucked up right behind Barrichello's rear wing. In sixth position is Jenson Button, 5 seconds ahead of Frentzen, who is 6 seconds ahead of Salo in eighth position. Ninth is Zonta, 10th is Woods.
Well, the lap times are all over the place, Murray. We saw Häkkinen do a 24.4 in some clear air, clearly with a fresh set of boots on just after his pit stop. But now they're in the late 25s again. As James pointed out earlier in the race, the pace is slightly curious.
Well, Michael Schumacher doesn't normally make mistakes. Let's have a look at this replay and see what's happened as they go through turns 1 and 2. 1 the right-hander, 2 the left-hander, and accelerate away. They're on their 32nd lap now, which is the half-distance lap. Well, I suppose to be exact, 33 will be the half-distance lap. But Michael Schumacher continuing to stay ahead of Häkkinen. Now Häkkinen's just got to pressure, hope that Schumacher will make a mistake, or that when they come up to lap people, and the next person they should be lapping is Jarno Trulli in the Jordan, who's down to 16th position. I don't know why he's dropped down so much. He was 8th at one point in the race.
We saw him in the pits, didn't we, with the back end jacked up, with the wheels spinning. I think he was struggling to find any kind of neutral to be able to pull away with. I think they probably dropped him off the jacks and sent him on his way. Suspect his clutch is not working. Doesn't matter when he's up and running, because the shift is so fast, they don't really need a clutch.
Well, thanks for that, Martin. It's, again, not a particularly happy race for Jordan. Neither of their cars are in the points. Jarno Trulli way down in that 14th position as you watch Michael Schumacher and Häkkinen fighting for the lead. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen is in 7th place behind Jenson Button. Now, ahead of Jarno Trulli, who is 14th, are the two Jaguars, with just 4 seconds between them. Eddie Irvine is in 12th position, still running at half distance. Johnny Herbert the same. And in 11th and 10th places, Fisichella and Woods. This is the half-distance lap at Barcelona, Spain, and there are the leaders, and you can see how close they are. Michael Schumacher leading Mika Häkkinen. They are 17 seconds ahead of Ralf Schumacher, who is continuing to stave off Rubens Barrichello's Ferrari in 4th position. There's only 0.6 of a second between them. It's as close for 3rd and 4th as it is for 1st and 2nd that you are looking at. David Coulthard has lost track position. He's down in 5th place. And Jenson Button in the 2nd Williams BMW is in the points in a magnificent 6th position, having qualified in 11th place. I was talking to him this morning. I said, what about the rumours that you have already signed for Williams BMW next year? Is it true? And he gave a little smile and said nothing. So I said, when are we going to get the news?
They're hiding in 1 or 2 of the British press today. They've obviously decided very kindly his honeymoon period is over, which is nice of them, but it doesn't seem to be affecting his focus as you're watching a slow-mo replay of 3rd, 4th and 5th, Ralf Schumacher, Barrichello and Coulthard. And back on track now, Michael Schumacher heading down into turn 1 with Mika Häkkinen clearly in hot pursuit.
James, news?
Yes, it's a tough job trying to make Michael Schumacher make a mistake, but of course Häkkinen did that at the Nürburgring 2 years ago. Will he do it today? I'm not sure that he necessarily needs to, guys. They both stopped in the mid-20s. Schumacher stopped lap 24, Häkkinen lap 26. They took on more or less exactly the same amount of fuel, which is good enough for 17 laps. But means I reckon that Schumacher's going to come in again on lap 41 with Häkkinen 43. That gives him 2 laps to win this motor race because he'll put the hammer down and try and build up enough of an advantage on that second stop to get out in front. It's going to be absolutely fantastic.
And between now and lap 41, there are 7 laps of this nose-to-tail battle between the McLaren of Mika Häkkinen, the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher.
And what Häkkinen will not know, and maybe even Michael Schumacher actually, is that Michael's got effectively a different crew to normal to refuel that car when it comes in. They're going to be slightly tentative as Michael hurtles towards them. They're the first pit as well. You can see your own car coming in, 160, 170 miles an hour, as he slams the brakes on to get down to 80 k's, 50 miles an hour before he approaches the pit garage, and they are very much the first people in the pit lane. And they'll be very, very nervous when Michael comes in for this stop.
Well, we know that Michael Schumacher was conserving tyres during the practice and qualifying periods. We know that he's on the medium compound Bridgestone, whereas Mika Häkkinen is on the softer one. We know that tyres degrade very rapidly here at Barcelona, although they weren't so bad in the warm-up this morning. Any theories on that?
I think it's nip and tuck between all of these tyres, and has been for some races now. I think they're choosing the tyres based on balance of getting the sliding of the front and the rear of the car more balanced up, more equal, if you like. And I think that's the decision the data they're basing their decision on, and I don't think it will affect them too much as the Grand Prix unfolds.
Well, just look at this. This is the battle for 3rd, 4th, 5th, and it's the Williams BMW, the Ferrari and the McLaren Mercedes. We ride with Rubens Barrichello, 4th position, chasing Ralf Schumacher. The magnificent Ralf Schumacher, who again, as he did on his first set of tyres, locks up the left front. It doesn't seem to be slowing him or distressing him at all. He's staying ahead. I said yesterday that it's worth repeating that this is a first-generation BMW engine on their return to Formula One. And I was talking to Dr. Mario Tyson, who is the technical chief at Munich yesterday, and he was telling me that they've got a second generation, a smaller, lighter engine, like the Mercedes, like the Honda, like the Ferrari, in the pipeline. I doubt that it'll be out this year, but they're doing jolly well on the existing one, because look at Ralf Schumacher, if anything, increasing the gap over himself and Rubens Barrichello.
Well, good news from down in the pit lane. Nigel Stepney has nothing broken. That's the Ferrari chief mechanic, who was pretty much walloped as Michael Schumacher came out of the pits. We saw him being carted off to hospital. He has nothing broken.
I know that Nigel is a fanatical fitness man. He goes skiing all through the winter. He lives in Italy, of course, and he goes skiing all through the winter, because you have to be mighty fit to handle that very, very heavy fuel hose. He's the chief mechanic. He regards it, and rightly so, as an enormously responsible job, and he takes that responsibility himself. And in order to handle it, he keeps as fit as he possibly can. And you can see now the Ferrari closing up on Jarno Trulli, who is in 14th position as Schumacher, Barrichello, David Coulthard, 5th position, Williams, Ferrari, McLaren battle for 3rd place, and Mika Häkkinen continues to circulate behind Michael Schumacher, 7/10 of a second behind him at the present moment on lap 37 out of 65. Fastest lap so far, Mika Häkkinen, 1:24.47, which is faster than Michael Schumacher's fastest lap last year, but slower, of course, than Fisichella's 97-lap record.
Well, this little batch of 3 in 3rd, 4th and 5th place are actually catching the leaders, who you're looking at now. Michael only by a 10th or 2 per lap, but another strange take on the pace of this race as Michael Schumacher homes into a lap of what must be Jarno Trulli, who pulled nicely out of the way, and Mika closer than ever. Look.
Yeah, you've just got to take your opportunity, because Mika would have seen, just as Michael Schumacher could see, that the Ferrari was closing up on, and he's having another look here, closing up on the Jordan, and he would have said to himself, this could be my opportunity if Michael Schumacher delays a second. I remember that fantastic passing move when Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari took the lead in Hungary from Ayrton Senna's McLaren, and it could have been a similar situation there. But
For sure, you'll slide into the side. He would have slid right into the side of that Ferrari.
lap 38 and 17 are still running. Retirements in order. Pedro Diniz out first. Alesi and De La Rosa came together and retired. As far as I know, they're perfectly all right. Jacques Villeneuve, you heard from Louise Goodman, has retired probably because of a hydraulics problem, having started sixth. That's Alexander Wurz leading the pits. Jos Verstappen is out of the race, so both the Arrows that were actually the fastest cars on the track yesterday in terms of all-out speed, De La Rosa the fastest and Verstappen the second, are both sadly out of the Spanish Grand Prix. 17th last and lapped Marc Genet. Mazzacane has been lapped, Heidfeld has been lapped, Jarno Trulli has been lapped. Now Johnny Herbert is the last driver on the track not to have been, and he's in 13th position, just behind his teammate Eddie Irvine, who is 12th. And there is Johnny Herbert as I speak in the Jaguar, and coming up behind him, soon to lap him, Schumacher and Häkkinen.
Now watch as Schumacher brakes. He submarines and goes down slightly in the car, and all the drivers do that. It just gives you an idea of the energy that's going on inside. If you watch that as they come into the big braking areas, you'll notice their crash helmet sinks down slightly into the cockpit as their body is literally submarining under 3.5 or 4G deceleration.
They're both driving a magnificent race. Mika Häkkinen is applying the pressure remorselessly. Michael Schumacher is resisting it remorselessly. Completes his 39th lap, goes into his 40th lap, as into the pit lane comes Johnny Herbert for his second pit stop. The Jaguar mechanics swarm around the car. Off come the front and rear wheels. On goes the fuel filler. And that red board you see going down onto the side pod is to prevent any petrol or petrol vapor getting through onto the exhaust system, and in comes David Coulthard from 5th position.
I think there's probably a smart move by McLaren for Coulthard there, because he was clearly losing time tucked up behind Barrichello, who was chasing Ralf Schumacher, and that may give him, they've calculated that should put him out into some clear air with a bit of luck, although I've just seen 2 cars going past, that may give Coulthard a chance to leapfrog Ralf and Rubens.
Yeah, I think it was a Jordan and the Minardi, so it was couldn't spot which ones it was, but there we are, out, and here come the leaders, Schumacher and Häkkinen, and they're on their 40th lap. There are still 25 laps to go in this race, which is going to be so crucial for the World Championship, because if Michael Schumacher can finish ahead of Häkkinen and increase his championship lead by another 4 points, it's going to be mighty depressing at minimum for McLaren.
Yes, I noticed that as Coulthard rejoined the track, Jenson Button was coming along, the 6th place man, so clearly McLaren waited until they could be sure Coulthard wouldn't lose track position to Jenson Button and then board him in, but Ferrari mechanics tentatively ready, and I wonder which one of them is coming, and we're assuming it must be Michael coming in first. But actually we're hearing it's Barrichello. Barrichello, they're getting held up slightly in the coming into the pits there. So Ferrari have reacted to Coulthard's pit stop in the McLaren. And so look, is that Ralf Schumacher who's in the pits?
I just saw the Williams very quickly, but that's a very bad pit stop for Barrichello, and I'm pretty sure it's going to cost him his position, and that David Coulthard will regain 4th position.
No, I don't think he will. Coulthard's gone past. Actually, yeah, there's Coulthard. How will they come out? Look, it's absolutely touch and go. Gone, David, down the outside, and Ralf is going to have to defend the inside, and does so brilliantly. Ralf Schumacher, very aware of this, but he didn't make it. Coulthard went around the outside. That was a brilliant awareness by Ralf Schumacher, but he couldn't just make the difference, and that has popped Coulthard up into 3rd place. So
David Coulthard gains not 1 but 2 places. He goes from 5th to 4th to 3rd as quickly as you can say it. Rubens Barrichello is down in 5th position with the Williams BMW in front of him.
Well, the Ferrari and Williams pit stop was a direct reaction as Michael Schumacher comes in for his second run. James?
They're both in, guys. Oh, your heart has to go out to Andrea Vaccari, the new stand-in fuel man. If he makes a mistake of this, he'll lose the race, and he has
not in. He's made a mistake.
The hose is not properly yet. Hakkinen goes, he leads the motor race, and Vaccari's blown it for Ferrari. What a tragedy for him.
What cruel luck for Ferrari and for the new refueler. He will be in an agony over that. You can't really blame him. This is the first time he's done it under the colossal stress of race conditions. But there goes Mika Hakkinen rejoining the track, followed by Eddie Irvine, followed by Johnny Herbert. We wait for the Ferrari to rejoin, and look at the gap as coming up behind them are Barrichello and Coulthard and Ralf Schumacher. So it's cost Ferrari and Michael Schumacher dear, and Mika Hakkinen is leading and looking very good to win the Spanish Grand Prix and his first victory of the year 2000. Here he is.
Well, James, you said something I thought was absolutely correct. They will have practiced with a reserve. Jenson Button in for a stop. Looks a reasonably long one, 9.2. Not too bad, but probably a second and a half longer than it should have been. But you said, James, I'm sure they've practiced with a spare refueler. But if they have, he certainly wasn't ready for the job when it mattered most.
And Mika Hakkinen comes up behind the Benetton, and it's Alexander Wurz, who is in 13th position. Now, the gap between Schumacher and Hakkinen, we'll have to wait and see, both visually and in terms of time, until the end of this lap. But I should think it's a good 3 or 4 seconds, and that is a massive amount, particularly as between Mika Hakkinen and Schumacher are the two Jaguars and one of the Benettons.
I reckon it'll be nearer 10 seconds, Murray. He was stationary a long time.
Right.
He's coming over the line now. It's 10.2. Lucky guess there from me. But now I'm looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to this, because now we'll see if Michael Schumacher's got anything up his sleeve. And he's got 23 laps to pull that 10-second deficit back. He's got a comfortable championship lead in his pocket, but he does not need these McLarens coming back at him so early in the season, especially now Coulthard is up into third. And now you're going to see what James was taking you through. He hasn't got it on. He's been in the pits a long time. The wheels are already finished, look. Tyre change already finished before the refueling even started. And that's why Michael Schumacher's gone from 6/10 ahead in this motor race to 10.2 seconds behind.
Well, the new refueler took a tentative dip at the fuel hose, pulled it out, pushed it back again, and that has cost Michael Schumacher the lead. You
touched on the refuelers having to be big guys, Murray, because when that hose is full of fuel and with all the gubbins on the end of it and the valves, I think it weighs several tens of kilos to lump. It's quite a clumsy thing to lump around, and then of course you've got to get it on square.
Yeah, you need a man actually to position it in the fuel outlet and someone else behind you to carry the weight of the hose. One man cannot do it. Now the gap is 10.2 seconds. David Coulthard is closing up on Michael Schumacher. He's under 6 seconds behind. Now here are the positions. Hakkinen on lap 44 leads Schumacher by now 11 seconds. David Coulthard is less than 5 seconds behind the Ferrari in third place. Ralf Schumacher is fourth, fifth is Barrichello, sixth is Salo. So in comes Mazzacane, who incidentally is testing for the Minardi team. A new titanium gearbox and rear end suspension. He's down in 15th position, but he's ahead of his Spanish teammate Marc Gené, they're both ahead of Nick Heidfeld, who is 17th and last in the Prost. But the question is, has Michael Schumacher got anything in reserve? On lap 43, it was a 10.2 second gap. On lap 44, it was an 11.2 second gap. But it's from now on that it's going to matter, and that's Nick Heidfeld in the Prost, because his teammate Alesi is long since out of the race, and Heidfeld goes off the track there that was a replay, of course, goes off the track onto the grass, back onto the track again, and David Coulthard is within 5 seconds of the Ferrari. It could be a complete turnaround for McLaren if Coulthard can keep up the pressure and continue to close on Michael Schumacher, who I think has got his race rhythm back again now. But David Coulthard has closed the gap to 3.7 seconds between himself in third place and the car you're looking at, Michael Schumacher's Ferrari, second position in Spain. Mika Häkkinen now 12 seconds ahead. He looks to have broken clear. And if he can stay where he is, he's going to have closed the gap between himself and Michael Schumacher for the World Championship, down by 4 points. 10 for Häkkinen, 6 for Michael Schumacher. So we're into lap 45 now, and it's the lap speeds at the end of this one and the lap times at the end of this one that are going to indicate things to us. Jarno Trulli exiting the pit lane. He came in 10th position in the Jordan. His teammate Heinz-Harald Frentzen is in 9th position. It's not a happy race for Jordan. It's not a very happy race for Ferrari at the present moment, because Michael Schumacher, who had led and who you are looking at now, is now nearly 14 seconds behind Mika Häkkinen and losing ground to David Coulthard, who's within 2 seconds of the Ferrari. Has Michael Schumacher got a problem? And Rubens Barrichello is in 5th position in the second Ferrari.
You see Coulthard there homing in. He took 1.8 seconds out of Michael Schumacher on the last lap alone. So I don't know whether Michael's a bit dispirited after all of the dramas of the afternoon. Both pit stops have been a disaster, as you've seen for yourself. And Coulthard now with a second win, homing in. Now he's managed to clear the Schumacher-Barrichello fight. He's lapping 1 to 1.5 seconds a lap faster than that. That gives you a very clear indication of just how much time these cars lose when they're following each other in the dirty air of the slipstream.
Well, you saw Mika Salo there. He was in 6th position as he came into the pits. And now look at David Coulthard. When the cameraman pulls back a bit, you'll see the McLaren right behind the Ferrari. There it is. This is the battle for second position now. Mika Häkkinen is well and truly on his way. Nearly 14 seconds on lap 47 out of 65 ahead of the Ferrari.
The one thing Michael Schumacher knows is that Coulthard's not scared to have a go at him. Coulthard passed him in the 98 British Grand Prix, and last year barge past him. And look at the speed that Coulthard's got. He's in the slipstream. Can he duck down the inside? Michael covering his ground. David having to yield. Don't fall off the end of the track, David. But Michael wrestling that Ferrari through turn 2. And well, you won't get around there, David. But Michael now really, and David at least knows when he gets anywhere near the slipstream, a little bit earlier on the pit straight, he can take a good run down the inside of Michael Schumacher. A lot of brake dust coming out of the back of Schumacher's car, and well, he's really carrying that Ferrari at the moment, isn't he?
Well, they're coming up behind Jarno Trulli, who's 14th, Johnny Herbert, who is 13th, Eddie Irvine, who is in 12th position in the second Jaguar. There's a lot of traffic ahead of them. This could be David Coulthard's opportunity to nip past Michael Schumacher if Michael gets it wrong in terms of lapping the 3 cars in front of him. But Michael Schumacher will know that just as well as David Coulthard does. And if there was any question of David...
Totally ready for the straight. I believe Schumacher's lost a lot of straight line speed. Something's happened in Schumacher's car that's hampering him even between turns 9 and 10. Coulthard was homing in on him down the straight, so if he gets in the slipstream, it's so difficult to stay close behind in that corner. Now, is he close enough? I believe he is, to have a serious go at the end. If there he coming in the slipstream, look, oh, Schumacher's heading towards the corner. David can only just make it when he gets there. Can he get around the outside? Yes, he can.
Fabulous move by David Coulthard, who passes Michael Schumacher on the outside. Not on the inside, on the outside of the corner. Now that certainly indicates to me that Michael Schumacher has got some sort of a problem. David Coulthard, a magnificent passing manoeuvre. Here it is again. Watch him as Michael Schumacher looks in his mirror to the right, moves across to the right. David Coulthard moves to the left and just drives straight round the Ferrari as as he did to Barrichello in the British Grand Prix at Silverstone.
Well, Michael's very aware that you can only move across the track once. He told us in an interview just today, didn't he, earlier on in the show, and that for the second consecutive race, Coulthard sweeps around the outside of a Ferrari, but I believe that particular Ferrari is limping a little.
Well, to keep the World Championship alive, this is what was needed in Formula One. McLaren fighting back magnificently, and now they are not only first, but they're second as well on a maximum 16 World Championship points in the Constructors' Contest, with 10 for Mika Häkkinen, 6 for David Coulthard, if they stay where they are now, lap 49 out of 65.
Yes, anybody following Ralf Schumacher today will have streaming eyes from all the burning tyre rubber smoke coming back towards them. Ralf, his tyres must look like 50p pieces when they take them off at the pit stops, but they're still neck and neck. Ralf Schumacher and Barrichello, they're just 0.6 of a second apart. They've gone over the line, back in 4th and 5th, and Coulthard now 20.6 seconds behind leader Häkkinen, and he's still got 17 laps left to be having a go at that gap too. Coulthard seeming to have a car that's working very well on this third set of tyres.
Yes, because don't think that just because Mika Häkkinen has won the World Championship twice in the last 2 years, that this means to say that he has precedence over David Coulthard in the McLaren team. They have equal conditions, and David Coulthard will want to win this Spanish Grand Prix as he won at Silverstone, just as much as Mika Häkkinen does. Perhaps even more after the dreadful happenings that David Coulthard has already had this week. He's totally focused on this race. You can see that if anything, he's mildly, very mildly, stretching his lead as we ride with Michael Schumacher, 3rd place.
Have a look at this, Murray. The next man behind Michael is now his brother, just 4.3 seconds back and gaining at 2 seconds per lap. So Michael has, I'm sure, got some kind of problem, and he's now falling back into the hole there. There's Ralf. I can't see Michael down the road, but
well, but right behind Ralf is the second Ferrari of Rubens Barrichello. So we've got Michael Schumacher Ferrari 3rd, being caught by his brother. Mazzacane, as you see, getting a 10-second penalty, but he's already in 16th position and a lap down. It's not going to affect the race at all. But Rubens Barrichello now is forcing as hard as he can. He can't feel particularly happy about this Spanish Grand Prix so far, because Barrichello started 3rd on the grid.
There's Michael Murray just ahead of them, look. Yes, Michael Schumacher now, he was 2.7 seconds ahead only as they crossed the start-finish line, and now he can't be much more than, what, just over a second, so clearly limping along.
Yeah, he's obviously got a problem. Of course, you can only hypothesise. We don't know whether whether the tyres have gone off, which is pretty unlikely, or whether he's got a gearbox problem or something to do with the engine. I don't think he's unsettled after the fuel filling problems he's had. It's got to be a car problem.
I think he's down on power, to be honest. I suspect that's his problem. Either he's missing, he could be missing a change.
Producer, because he has to decide what pictures you're going to see, and he certainly chose the right ones there with those replays, as Bob McMurray in the McLaren pit smiles at the way things are going, as well he might do, because his man Mika Häkkinen is leading, his man David Coulthard is second. McLaren Mercedes are 1st and 2nd in the Spanish Grand Prix, looking good for 16 points. We're on lap 52, 13 laps to go. Barrichello is slower than both the men ahead of him. It's looking good for McLaren.
Well, what will be interesting to see next is, can Jenson Button start homing in on Michael Schumacher? He's currently 11.7 seconds behind him. Michael down to 5th place, Button in 6th in the BMW Williams. And can he now start attacking the man who's currently leading the World Championship, who's about to get a bit of a dent in his points lead?
Here's the replay on the outside. Ralf Schumacher, Rubens Barrichello shoots through on the inside. Ralf Schumacher tucks in front of his brother, who loses 2 places in about 200 yards in an absolutely scintillating race move. And Mika Häkkinen is now 22 seconds ahead of David Coulthard. who is actually lapping marginally faster, but only 0.4 of a second faster than his teammate. And if Mika Häkkinen can finish this race, it's going to be his first victory of the year 2000. The last time he won a race, of course, was the Japanese Grand Prix last year. That magnificent drive when, for the second year in succession in Japan, he clinched the World Championship with an absolutely fabulous race performance. And this will get Mika Häkkinen's tail right up. I have felt in the last few weeks that he was getting a bit depressed. Yes, he's enormously phlegmatic and determined, but I had a feeling that it was getting slightly on top of him. Not anymore if he wins this race, because the points position is going to have closed up quite a lot. Michael Schumacher, of course, will still very much be in the World Championship lead, but Ferrari will have to start worrying, because McLaren will have won if they finish first in this race. The last two Grand Prix compared with the first three, which were won by the Maranello constructor Ferrari. And here is Ricardo Zonta in 9th position. Now the top 10 on lap 54, Häkkinen leads Coulthard by 22 seconds, Barrichello by 32 seconds, Ralf Schumacher by 35 seconds, 5th is Michael Schumacher, Jenson Button has stabilised at 6th, and then it's Frentzen, Salo, Zonta and Fisichella. Well, after all the drama in Spain, we'd see a very familiar situation. We're actually looking at David Coulthard, but we were looking at Mika Häkkinen in the lead in the Spanish Grand Prix on lap 55 out of 65. 10 laps to go then, and he's 22 seconds ahead of his teammate David Coulthard, who crosses the line now, about 32 seconds ahead of Rubens Barrichello. It's looking as though McLaren are on a 1-2 as they were in Britain. 16 points to close the World Championship up considerably. Exciting times.
Well, I was wrong about Michael Schumacher having an engine problem, because with that change of tyres, he's now back on the kind of leading pace that he was sharing with Mika Häkkinen and pulling away from Jenson Button in 6th place. So Michael maybe had a slow puncture or something like that, but he just seemed very, very slow down the straights too.
So on lap 55, let's take time out to establish clearly the top 10 as you watch race leader Mika Häkkinen, 22 seconds ahead of David Coulthard, 33 seconds ahead of Rubens Barrichello, 2 McLaren's lead, Ferrari third, Ralf Schumacher is 3 seconds behind Rubens Barrichello's Ferrari in 4th place, and 18 seconds ahead of his brother Michael in the second Ferrari, which is 5th. Jenson Button in the points for Williams again. He's already had 2 World Championship points finishes in his first 4 races. He's in 6th place. 7th is Frentzen, 8th is Salo, 9th is Zonta, and in 10th position Fisichella. There are 17 cars running out of the 22 who started. 11th is Wurz, 12th and 13th, the 2 Jaguars of Eddie Irvine, running reliably but not quickly enough. They've both been lapped. Jarno Trulli in the Jordan is in 14th position. Both the Jordans are still running, neither of them in the points. Genet in the Minardi is 15th. His teammate Mazzacane is in 16th position, been lapped twice. Nick Heidfeld in the Prost is 17th, and he's been lapped twice. The retirements in order of retiring: Pedro Diniz, De La Rosa and Alesi together when they collided. Jacques Villeneuve out with a hydraulic problem in the VAR. Jos Verstappen, I would guess, an electrical problem, because he came in and changed his steering wheel unsuccessfully. And so those are the 5 retirements. And now we're on lap 56 out of 65, 9 to go, riding with Michael Schumacher, riding with Rubens Barrichello, I apologise, in 3rd place. Closing up on David Coulthard by about 0.4 of a second a lap. But as he is some 10 seconds behind the McLaren, which passed him in that fantastic move we saw.
Just gone over the line, so that is a car ahead that's about to be lapped, I think you'll find, Mary.
Yeah, you're right. We'll spot who it is as over the line goes Rubens Barrichello down to turn 1. He's doing the thick end of 200 miles an hour now as he shifts down into third gear, 80 miles an hour on the apex, into turn 2, up to about 110 miles an hour, still accelerating round turn 3, the double 90, and we can see soon who it's the Jaguar of Johnny Herbert that he's coming up to lap. Johnny Herbert in 13th place has already been lapped, of course, by Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard. Rubens Barrichello there in third position. Well, Barrichello was second in Australia and fourth in the San Marino Grand Prix. He's had a couple of retirements, and that is Nick Heidfeld, 17th and last, after his fourth pit stop. He's had all sorts of problems, and his teammate Jean Alesi was out of the race a long time ago. Prost is probably the unhappiest Grand Prix team this year, because all their promise of the past seems to have evaporated. The car is unreliable, they're not getting testing miles, and as a result of that they can't build speed.
I'm sure Jordan will be too happy, or Benetton for that matter. Jordan came to this, the 5th race also of last season, with 16 points already in the bag, and they arrived there this weekend with just 8, and neither of their cars looking anywhere near a points finish at the moment, and they're going to need unreliability if they're going to get points today. So Jordan, and I think particularly Benetton, have really slipped back down the field since their early pace back in Brazil.
Well, what lessons do you think we can learn about McLaren and Ferrari? Because I was convinced when this race began that there was nothing in it between them in terms of performance. I think Schumacher suffered obviously because of those 2 failed pit stops of his, but Barrichello really hasn't been in the race.
No, he hasn't, has he? Once again, not demonstrated raw pace. I think we felt earlier in the season the McLaren did have the upper edge on pace, even though Michael won the first 3 races. I think actually, had Michael got away in Silverstone and not been held up just off the line trying to pass Hakkinen, he would have been a serious threat to win that race. Michael, I think, probably had the edge in Silverstone with the strategy they were running. And today, we said at the beginning of the show, it was going to be very, very close. There's virtually nothing between Ferrari and McLaren. But I thought the Ferrari had the slight edge. Michael pulled away. That looked to be correct for a while. And then he's really just faded.
Well, you've just seen Rubens Barrichello in third position, lapping Eddie Irvine, who is in 12th place, having already passed the other Jaguar of Johnny Herbert. And Mika Hakkinen is on his 59th lap now, 20.7 seconds ahead of Coulthard, who continues to lap faster and quite significantly faster than Hakkinen, but that 20 seconds gap is not going to be closed by Coulthard unless Hackinen's got a problem, and I don't think he has.
What can you tell us, James, about the Ferrari performance?
Hey, I'm in the Ferrari garage now, Martin, and you were probably right. I mean, they've just taken the tyres off now, and one of them has a considerably lower pressure than the other 3. They're sure that they were equal when they put them on the car, but they're saying it doesn't appear to be punctured. They can't understand how it lost pressure during the race, but that for sure was the problem, and that's why he was so slow coming out of that final corner onto the long straightaway. And obviously now he's got a new set of tyres on, and away he goes. Very strange day indeed down here in the Ferrari garage.
Well, as an ex-tyre employee, I can only hypothesise that it is a faulty bead in the tyre. More of that later, maybe, and maybe not. Lap 60 now, 5 laps to go. Hakkinen can pace himself now to his first victory of the year 2000, his first 10-point finish, and to close up the gap in points between himself and Michael Schumacher by a minimum of 8 points, because Michael Schumacher's only on 2 points at the present moment. He looks as though he should get them, because he's pulling away from Jenson Button, who looks like getting his 3rd points finish in his 5th Grand Prix in his short career. It's an incredible performance if he does, and Williams can be rightly proud of themselves, BMW can be rightly proud of themselves, but McLaren, I can just visualise Ron Dennis, because after they'd finished first and second in Britain, Ron smiled quietly at Louise Goodman when she was interviewing him and said, not bad. Well, he's probably going to be saying the same thing again, but not bad would be a masterpiece of understatement. It would be a quite magnificent victory for McLaren, for Adrian Newey, who designed the car, for Mario Ilian, who designed the Mercedes-Benz V10 engine, and for everybody who'd been associated with it. Not least, of course, Bridgestone for supplying the tyres. And Mika Häkkinen crosses the line now. He's on his 61st lap now. 5 laps to go.
Well, it's surely a great and very consistent drive by young Jenson Button back there in 6th, but I think you'll find him be slightly disappointed. He's actually 35 seconds behind his teammate, and that's really how he's got to judge his afternoon. So another point in the bag, but some valuable experience, but I think he'd be just a touch disappointed.
So behind those top 6, the top Jordan is 13 seconds, driven by Heinz-Harald Frentzen behind Jenson Button, and not looking good for a point. Everybody else has been lapped at least once, and Mazzacane has been lapped twice in the Minardi. Heidfeld has been lapped 3 times in the Prost. He's the last runner. Everybody else has been lapped once. Into the pits comes Johnny Herbert from that lowly 14th position, 2 places behind Eddie Irvine. Well, hopefully Jaguar have now got reliability. What they have to build, and they know it as well as I do, is speed. They have a completely revised management structure that's been announced here in Spain, with Neil Ressler having been taken over, has taken over at the top. And there's a very strong board, including Wolfgang Reitzler, Jonathan Browning and Richard Parry Williams. Now there's going to be a lot of strength at Jaguar. They've got their own wind tunnel now being built, but it's a long, long haul. And when you remember that the team that they've in effect taken over, which was Stewart, actually won a race last year, indicates that Jaguar have still got a great, great deal to do as we watch Mika Häkkinen, lap 62, and David Coulthard is continuing to catch him. But then Mika Häkkinen did exactly the same thing to Coulthard at Silverstone to finish second, about 1.5 seconds behind David Coulthard. I think Häkkinen is pacing himself to victory.
Absolutely, without doubt. There's no way David on matching pace for pace could pull that kind of gap back, and they'll both be nursing their cars and changing 300-400 revs earlier, not braking too late, just keeping it all smooth. And Mika now lapping some 2.8 seconds slower than his fastest lap of the race, set earlier on at a 1:24.4. Just to recap on the race, Michael Schumacher got away beautifully from pole position. Häkkinen starting well, Ralf Schumacher having a blinding start. Barrichello falling back to 5th. Then, as they went through, the key moment of the race was Michael Schumacher's pit stop, where the refueling rig did not come out, although they lifted the lollipop and sent him on his way, causing some damage, causing a lot of uncertainty. That then wrecked his second pit stop and put Mika Häkkinen with this clear lead. Michael Schumacher appears then, had a slow puncture. Coulthard had a good run at him. McLaren doing a good job to get Coulthard back out ahead of Ralf Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello to give him track position. They then were able to maximise on that by passing Michael when he had that slow puncture. So 1 and 2 is how they've ended up, with now just 3 laps left to run.
And let us remember too the terrible pressure that David Coulthard has been under all this week, and in the build-up to the Spanish Grand Prix he's had to keep himself focused, concentrate on the racing, forget the dreadful happening at Lyon Airport, put that behind him and ignore the press pushing and shoving to get at him and demand stories from him at a time when he was under enormous mental pressure. My heart goes out to him, and particularly, of course, to the families of the 2 pilots who perished in that tragic crash. So we're on lap 63 now. There is Ron Dennis with Pat Fry on the right, sitting calmly and confidently, just waiting for those last couple of laps to unfold. We're on lap 63 now. Mika Häkkinen is about to start the 64th and penultimate lap of the Spanish Grand Prix of 2000.
Jenson Button has stopped. Button has stopped. We think it's an engine problem. Haven't seen it on the screen. I'm hearing from James down in the pits. He's seen or heard something. I'm expecting you'll see it anytime soon. What a shame. Button dropping out of that point scoring. There it goes, coming out of turn 9. And,
engine.
that's for sure.
And that means to say that Jordan look as though they are going to get a World Championship point after all. Heinz-Harald Frentzen moves up into 6th position for 1 World Championship point. And Mika Häkkinen driving onwards now. 7th is Salo, 8th is Zonta, 9th is Fisichella. Completing the top 10 is Alexander Wurz. Both the Benettons in the top 10. And Mika Häkkinen just about 3 miles, perhaps 3.5 miles away from his first victory of 2000. Look at the Finnish flags flying there. There's a very big contingent of Finns here. They follow their man with enormous enthusiasm, and they're going to get their reward here in Spain, because in just a minute and a half or so's time, the man you are looking at, Mika Häkkinen, is going to be coming into the finish to score his 15th career Grand Prix win, to give him 10 World Championship points, to add to the 12 that he already has. Now, Michael Schumacher should finish this race on 36 points. Mika Häkkinen will finish on 22 points. The gap will have been dramatically reduced between the two of them. The World Championship is a long, long way from being finished, and we're on the last lap.
Must be lovely for Häkkinen to see that board. P1, L1, position 1, of course. 1 lap to go, 17.3 seconds ahead of David Coulthard. Barrichello a further 14.5 seconds down the road. So it's quite a spread out now for the podium players, but I think they'll all be pretty satisfied with their afternoon, given where they were coming from.
Indeed, and especially Mika, the quiet, unflappable, pragmatic Mika Häkkinen, 17 seconds ahead of David Coulthard. Their lap times have come down considerably, indicating the fact that they are pacing themselves home, and there's a very, very short distance now between Mika Häkkinen and that wonderful sight for a racing driver, the checkered flag, which means not only that you have finished the race, but that you have, in his case, won it. The Spanish Grand Prix. Out of the right-hander comes Mika Häkkinen. You can see the crowd moving in the background, the Finnish flags waving there. Into and out of the last corner now comes Mika Häkkinen, crossing the line, and it is victory for Häkkinen, McLaren and Mercedes in Spain. And the mass of blue and white flags, it's a very happy, a very relieved Mika Häkkinen. David Coulthard, I'm just looking to see whether, yes, David Coulthard goes through in 2nd position. There he is. So, for the 2nd race in succession, the McLaren team have scored 16 World Championship points in the Constructors' Contest, as Rubens Barrichello finishes in 3rd position. Now, is it going to be Ralf Schumacher in the Williams BMW in 4th place in just a few seconds' time? Yes, over the line he goes. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen is 35 seconds down the line. Only 6 people will have completed the full race distance.
Great day for McLaren. Many people here expected the Ferrari to have the edge and possibly even scamper off into the distance today. But it didn't happen, and it tightens the championship up very nicely for us, the fans. And certainly any ideas that this would all be over by July or August this year with a whitewash by Michael Schumacher is firmly out of the window now. I think, Murray, we're in for quite a tight championship yet again.
Indeed we are. And you saw an overjoyed Mario Illian there, who'd had engine problems in the Australian and Brazilian Grand Prix to put right. Ferrari won those 2 races very convincingly. But now, in the Drivers' Championship, Mika Häkkinen is up into 2nd place ahead of David Coulthard and 14 points behind Michael Schumacher, and 2 points ahead of David Coulthard. Rubens Barrichello, who started this race equal 4th in the championship, is now just 1 point in 4th place ahead of Ralf Schumacher, and Fisichella well down in 6th position. Now, McLaren are only 7 points behind Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship. The World Championship of 2000, which at one time looked as though it was going to be a Michael Schumacher and Ferrari benefit, is proving, thanks to a couple of brilliant races from McLaren and Mercedes, to be quite the opposite.
I'd love to be in the room when the two Schumacher brothers get together. They do tend to get together just after the race and go and have a drink at a certain place in the paddock. And it's going to be a very interesting conversation, because if Michael didn't intend to wrestle his brother out like that, and I think he probably did, then he certainly made a bad error and cost his brother a place. So they're going to have an interesting conversation one way or the other.
Thumbs up from Mika Häkkinen all the way round the track. He's obviously absolutely overjoyed inside the cockpit there, and with every good reason. Touring home, the flags flying. Well, I said before that sometimes the Spanish Grand Prix, and particularly last year, has been processional, anything but this year. That was the Michael Schumacher, Ralf Schumacher, Rubens Barrichello situation was certainly one of the most exciting passing manoeuvres I have seen for a very, very long time. Here's Rubens getting out of the cockpit, and confirmation about the Constructors' Championship, with Ferrari just being 7 points ahead of McLaren Mercedes. And Williams BMW holding their third position ahead of Jordan.
But Coulthard struggling to get out. The last time I saw him before the race, he had a frozen bag on his ribs and was laying down, and he looked like he could barely walk out of the motorhome, let alone get in a Formula 1 car.
He looked a bit tense and stiff there, Martin, as he eased himself out of the cockpit. In comes Mika. Now, when he gets up onto that podium, are we going to see him replicate the Michael Schumacher jump? I don't think so. Both David Coulthard and Mika Häkkinen are pretty conservative chaps on the podium, and they're both up there again for the second race in succession. Only one Ferrari driver, but once again Williams BMW have got one of their cars. It looked as though it was going to be both of them in the points.
So the pole sitter has still yet to win a race since the last Hungarian Grand Prix in August of 1999.
Absolutely so. Congratulations to myself. I'm delighted, says Mika Häkkinen, as Ron Dennis and Jürgen Hubbard from Mercedes-Benz congratulate him. Love to know what Ron's saying to him.
Ron will be filling Mika in on certain events that Mika may not be aware of earlier on in the race, and Ron likes to keep the corporate stuff under control, and I think that's the right thing to do. Mika's going to go up onto the podium. The next thing is he's in the press conference and then the unilateral TV, so any little bit of information he can gather between getting out of his crash helmet and facing the world press is very, very useful.
That's Norbert Haug, who is the Mercedes-Benz competition boss, who is quite rightly congratulating him. Now they go into the scrutineering area to be weighed, something that we've seen many times in the past.